Welcome to episode 154 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week, we finish our Bloodborne series with part 2. Let's get right into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to the Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Jacob McCord, and today I have two friends with me. The first friend, you know her, you love her. Her name is Katie Lesperance.
Hello! I'm back from my hunt and ready to talk about it.
And here to suffer with us is my second friend, Flora Marigold. Flora, did you survive?
Well, it's a complicated question because I've survived up until a point, but I suppose we'll talk about how far I survived.
I love that so much. I have so many things to say. Katie has so many things to say. Flora, you have so many things to say. I know Seto in the Discord has been talking about their experience playing Bloodborne. So, look, we're going to spoil all of Bloodborne today. So if you have not played Bloodborne and you want to play Bloodborne. Before you listen to this, you should listen to episode 152, which was the first part of our series, which the three of us and Mo talked about our first couple of hours of Bloodborne. We've gotten so much better at it, but I'm sure we have much more to learn. Y'all, where the heck do we start with Bloodborne? Did we all finish Bloodborne? Is probably the best question to start with.
Yeah, one at a time. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Oh, go
Jacob.
I finished Bloodborne.
No way.
Yep.
Look at you.
Genuine round of applause. I did not expect that.
So my hopes and dreams were that you would get, in the back of my mind, I hoped that you would finish it. But what I hoped at least that you would get maybe halfway through and not, so that you could experience at least a good amount of it. So you could have a feeling for what the game is and not just have your initial frustration phase and be done and nope out. And then that would be your entire Bloodborne experience. But I'm so happy that you finished it. And I could see the pride in your eyes, my friend.
Yeah. I think I broke the cardinal rule on this podcast, Katie, but I don't think I would have finished it without breaking the rule. And Flora, so for context, I don't think I told you this. At a few points throughout the playthrough of Bloodborne, there was one time where Katie and friend of the show, Travis Colnut, were hanging out in real life, and they said, Jacob, had you guys had a few drinks?
We were having a night. We were enjoying ourselves, yes.
Okay. You texted me at, 10 o'clock at night, and we're like, Jacob, are you playing Bloodborne? We want to watch.
Because you can PS5 screen share. And I'm like, you could share your screen and we could just watch you play on my TV, on my PS5. So let's do it. And Travis was very excited. So, yeah, we talked you into that.
Yeah, and I think the first night it didn't work out. But the second time I was like, y'all, are you hanging out again? Because I'm going to share my screen. And so, Katie, you coached me through a lot of my questions. I used a lot of guides. I have no shame about that at all. And I feel like without getting the feedback last time of, don't be afraid of looking at guides, and like Katie using you, I don't think I would have finished it without that. But
I'm happy to help.
I took the easy way out. I'm sure you know what I'm trying to say. Out of the endings, I took the easy way out. Flora, I don't think you finished, so I don't want to totally spoil it. But I'm still proud though. Flora, I might have just spoiled it, but did you finish?
I did not finish. I am disappointed in myself, honestly, and I know you were incredibly gracious. Exactly. I feel like I made it really far.
It's a time crunch matter. It's not for lack of effort and want to, it seems like.
We had to record a show matter.
Yeah, and I appreciate that grace, but I also mismanaged my time. Like, Bloodborne hit at probably the busiest point in my professional life in the last several months, and I simply, when I was outside of work, kind of lacking the discipline and energy and focus that a game like this takes, and I simply just pushed it off. And then about a week before the record date, I suddenly panicked, realizing how little progress I had made. And I'm pretty proud of myself over the last 72 hours how much of this game I've gotten through.
You were nowhere close. 3 days ago, I thought, oh my gosh, she's not very far. Like, we're potting. And then you're like, I beat this, I'm this far. I'm like,
you kept updating in our FromSoft channel, and I was like,
crushing it.
Well, I locked in, and I suddenly had some time off. I had no other plans for the weekend. I literally just like turned my phone upside down on my desk so I wouldn't be distracted, and just went for it. So for context for listeners, the point that you were all probably worried about is I had just beaten Vicar Amelia, and that I don't think is substantially far, but it is I felt accomplished at that point because that's a name in the Bloodborne canon.
That's like
that
halfway?
You hear.
No.
Yeah, like I had known.
No?
Well, no, I probably
like
would say maybe a third, generously, maybe a fourth.
Tops.
Yeah,
Tops.
I nowhere close to half. But I knew Father Gascoigne. I knew Vicar Amelia, like, names. You hear these things as someone who, like, hears people rave about
Vicar
Bloodborne.
Amelia.
And I
No,
thought
you
that
weren't
she...
far.
Exactly. Like, I thought that she was, like, a late-game boss because of how much, like, cultural impact on the fandom she has had. But it turns out that, like, that's nowhere. It's, like, almost right after Father Gascoigne, if you can find your way there. And then I proceeded to go through, I think it was Shadows of Yharnam, which I knew, Jacob, that was, according to descriptions you had left in the Discord, like, going to be a massive roadblock. We'll talk about how I approached that later, but long story short, I am all the way to a lantern, what was the place called? Starts with an M. Can anyone help me place the location here?
Mensis?
I think so.
Or no,
It's like
Murgo's
5
Loft.
letters.
Are you at one of Murgo's
Yeah,
Loft?
that. Yeah.
In the
Yes.
bottom or the middle?
In the
I think
base.
you said
I think the
base.
base of Lantern was where I got, and for various time-related reasons, I was unable to pick up from there any further.
Very close.
That makes me feel so much worse, though. I like this game enough.
mean, It doesn't
I'll
mean
go
that you're an
back, but-
hour out. Like, you
Yeah.
don't know. It could have been many hours. It could have been, I don't know. We don't know. But still, you're in
that
the
took
end
me
stage.
5 hours after
yeah.
Okay.
Only because I struggled with Mikolash, the next boss you're about to fight, so bad. I struggled with Mikolash so much.
Oh, the guy with the cage head. Okay.
Yeah, Cagehead. The one who's like an old hunter reskinned, but in a maze. Katie, you beat it again, didn't you?
I beat it my number 2 playthrough. Beat it again. Beat all the Old Hunters DLC. Beat every optional boss within that playthrough. And then in New Game Plus, beat it again to get my third ending so that I have all 3 endings. So I did everything, except I didn't do everything, and I will get to it later. I have a rant stored. I'm trying to keep it in, but I will get to it. But yes, I beat.
Your rants are so good. I'm excited.
Thank you. I beat everything, and I had so much fun doing it, and I got so much more enjoyment out of playing it again than I thought I would, because I realized that the first time playing through that so much of my energy was focused on just completing the game, on just surviving, because I had never played any of these games before. So I'm just trying to get through, and that took most of my energy. Like, I took on some of the story. I liked hearing about the story, but I still did not get everything out of it that I could have. And I got so much more out of it, and I appreciate this game so much more than I did before.
I'm really curious, because you mentioned replaying the game. How many are you able to see, like, total hours that you sunk into this, or could you estimate how many it took you on this revisit?
I could pull it up on my PlayStation. I don't think I can pull it up on my app at this moment. My first playthrough probably took me a good longer than, a long time for playing pretty bare bones, probably like 35 or so hours.
Okay.
This one, actually, you know what? I know I'm up to about 100 or so but I also played all the DLC and I explored every optional area. I think I'm conflating 2 different things, but my last playthrough of just like getting through the game to get start to finish, probably only like, I don't know, 8-10 hours maybe tops.
Okay, wow. Okay, that's much shorter than I would have expected, but I guess with the skill and the navigational knowledge, and I imagine the difficulty is adjusted on a New Game Plus, all those factors considered, I guess that shouldn't be so surprising. I think it took me about 25 hours to get to where I'm at, if I had to just kind of spitball it, but oddly enough, my PS5 tells me that I've played this for a total of 12 hours, which is nowhere near close to correct. It is mislogged something somewhere.
Yeah, where I actually just opened my PS5 in real time to say how many, and I was surprised by the number because it's actually lower than it felt. I felt like I played for 25 to 30 hours, but my PlayStation 5 only says I played 21.
Wow.
I want to go back to this, me and a friend of the show, Travis Colnut, watching Jacob play Bloodborne. Because up to that point, all I had gotten from him was, oh my God, I hate this game. Oh my God, I hate everything. Oh my God, I want to throw my controller through my TV screen. Oh my God, I hate this. And I would message him and be like, what is happening? What is going on? What are you doing? Like, what? I don't understand. What? Explain it to me. And then I would be like, have you leveled up your character? And he'd say,
I'm not
nope.
the best texter, to be honest.
No, you're not. But that's okay. And I'd be like, what do you mean you haven't leveled up your character? Like, what do you mean you... Okay. And so I'd try and direct you that way. But actually watching Jacob play Bloodborne...
I'm so jealous.
You bad at Bloodborne, man. You
Really?
bad.
I thought you were going to say you were pleasantly surprised.
I wasn't. Okay, not that you're bad. When you're
I
focused,
think I'm good at Bloodborne. Like,
You-
good for me. I'm an average player.
Yes, but okay, you know what? That's not fair. It's not that you're bad at Bloodborne. It's that I already knew that in general you were a impatient person,
Yeah, impatient. Super impatient.
and it did not help your Bloodborne playing whatsoever. I witnessed Jacob running through the first area of the Forbidden Woods and just running past everyone and watching 20 enemies chasing him down. And then he would run into, he doesn't know where he's going and stop running and then go, oh no, when they all beat him to death because they caught up. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you didn't kill anything and they're all chasing you. So I was just like, what is he doing? What is he doing? And then so me and Trey, I was like, oh. And sometimes we were talking to you a little bit. I was like, no, turn right, like go around that thing. And you're like, and then next thing you know, you didn't go that way. And I'm like, oh God. But you know what? You're right. You're not bad at Bloodborne. You're just more impatient than I already knew. And whereas I am a patient video game player, I think, like I enjoy long games and you don't enjoy long games. So I feel like you're trying to rush through it and you're like, no, I want to get to the end. Whereas I like to soak it in a little bit more. So I feel like there's the personality difference is a big component in this, in the playing of FromSoft games.
I very much wonder if I have ADHD because I'm the kind of person, if a load time is too long, I'm going to look at my phone. I'm the kind of person
I'm pretty sure
that
we all
will
do
rush
that.
that will rush through a Bloodborne level Bloodborne's the only game where I will literally just run past enemies. Like in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I'm not going to run through the enemies. But I ended up finding Harry94 on YouTube, and they had these really great location videos where they would be like, oh, to get to the one reborn, let me show you the literal path you need to take, because as we know, Bloodborne's obtuse, and so sometimes you think that the path that is clearly laid out for you is a path to a boss, but that is not necessarily the case. So these videos were always great, and I would learn how to get to a boss, and once I knew how, I'd be like, oh, like if I had to face off against, I don't know, what boss did I really have trouble with? Like the Witch of Hemwick, for example, I knew exactly how to like run through the world to get to them.
Which works in some circumstances, but other times doesn't work.
No.
Several thoughts on this. I first and most pressingly, I'm astonished to realize I didn't try to look this up. What's the path to the One Reborn? Because the pathway you have to take to that boss sucks. Like, you have to like dodge and weave your way back and forth, like zigzag as you sprint past these box of corpses, and they like spit their like projectile blood thing at you. I know there's like a bridge that you can like climb up to or something, but I never actually looked at that or explored it because at some point my priority shifted to completing bosses that are like required rather than exploring things. And is there like some alternative or counterintuitive way to get to that boss? Okay, the only reason I ask so like pressingly is because Seto told me that there's a bath that you can find too if you roll off the elevator midway down to the area where you find this boss, and if you lay down in this like bathtub or whatever, you then teleport like much, much, much closer, and none of the enemies, the box of corpses, aggro. I never would have found this, but I was wondering if that was your location. Yeah, okay, I'm glad that both of you have wide-eyed astonishment, because this was news to me. My biggest hurdle in all Dark Souls games is the boss run, like the distance between where you respawn and where you have to like start the fight over. I think that's like my least favorite part of Souls games, generally speaking, because the thing I'm bad at is not clearing the normal enemies. The thing I'm bad at is fighting the new big thing. But anyway, if there's no hidden path, then I don't feel as exasperated. The other
those boxing one shot would sometimes one shot, so I just found a way to bob and weave through their like spitting poison and their one shot slashes.
You run like you're supposed to run away from an alligator, side to side.
Yes.
Crisscross.
I don't know how much that works as the resident alligator state person, but in any case, run away. The other thing I was thinking about is you were talking about patience in these games, and I really think that I am a deeply impatient person. I don't know that I've ever like pontificated about this, but when it comes to video games, I totally understand the urge when you've gone through an area and figured out how to meander through the enemies and such. In these games, you can either sprint or roll through these areas without consequence most of the time, unless you linger in an area in like the wrong spot, because at some point enemies stop aggroing and chasing you pretty much universally. But like, I wonder, so the question that I kind of want to like yield out of this is, in Bloodborne / Souls games more generally, it is advantageous to be patient for the sake of gaining experience and just like collecting the blood echo currency in this game and then spending those points on upgrading your character or repairing your weapon or purchasing items and stuff like that. And I wonder if that's something you simply don't care about, and if you were just like cocky and just like, I don't need more stamina, I'm just gonna run up to the boss, who cares? Or if this was more of like a motivation to simply finish the game for the sake of the podcast.
So I think I might have had, I don't want to say I had a lot of hubris going in. I didn't. I had like mid-game hubris where I was pretty awful for the first couple hours. And then I think I finally cracked the code on how to... I think I developed a little bit of patience. Because, Katie, you looking at my style of play, I think you can see that in individual fights I was having, I was not... I was patient.
You could have killed everything in the area, but you didn't want to, which I understand. But I'm like, no, if you just took your time and like went over to the side and killed that enemy, then killed that enemy, you could have easily cleared the room and then just kept moving on and exploring and clearing. But you're just like, no, I'm going to run forward, and then you would die, and then you'd be so frustrated that you would die. And I'm like, but that's because you have 12 people chasing you, and you could have killed them. That's the thing. That's why I redact my statement. You're not bad at Bloodborne. You're just impatient.
Fair. I'm an average player who just happens also to be very impatient.
Yes.
I didn't realize the importance of leveling up also until like I hit maybe the 5 or 6 hour mark, and I finished at, no joke, level 69.
Nice.
Which I thank you. Thanks. Which I think is like probably pretty average for a playthrough.
I think I'm at like 65 right now.
Oh yeah, so you're gonna probably end higher than me. But I don't think that I could have made it through the game. Yeah, fair. I don't think I could have beaten the game under level 50 or like even 60. No. I don't know if I fully answered your question though, Flora.
Oh, so like specifically I'm wondering if the motivation to finish the game was what was driving this impatience, or if you simply like once you've explored an area you're kind of done with like having to rehash the recycled respawn of all of these NPCs that don't really ultimately matter.
I think since I've never played a Soulsborne game before, and I'm not going to spoil my full thoughts, but like I'm not sure this one compelled me to play the genre more. I just
you just spoiled your thoughts.
Yeah, I just spoiled my thoughts. I played 21 hours of this game. I finished it. I appreciate it. I just had gotten to the point maybe because I was doing optional bosses up until the Blood Moon happened.
I don't know. Were you doing them intentionally though, or were you just going, "Oh crap, that one was optional"?
Well, I would come to it, and then if I ever came to it, I would beat it, but if I wouldn't seek out the optional bosses. So I think I ended up beating either 3. I think I beat 3 optional bosses, but I didn't seek out any of the other ones. So to your point, I think I was motivated in order finishing a Bloodborne game or finishing a Soulsborne game for the first time, so I could point at Mike Ruffalo and said I did it. And I actually told him today. I said, Mike, I beat it.
Shout out to Mike Ruffalo.
No way! Shout out to Mike Ruffalo. That was my first motivation. My second was for the podcast, and third was just to be done with it. I guess.
I think I did 2 optional bosses. At least once I recognized that I wanted to make progress in the game, I started like looking up what the next mandatory boss was and just kind of aiming for that. But I did the Cleric Beast and oh god, I'm not forgetting it. But there is at least one optional boss.
You did the Bloodstarved Beast, did you not?
Oh yeah,
The
that's optional as well.
in old,
okay, so
old
maybe I
German?
did. I feel like I did 3 for some reason. Dark Beast Parl I encountered and then I just bailed. It felt way too intimidating and I didn't make a scratch and it was one-shotting me. This was early in the playthrough though. I got like nabbed by some random person and dragged to. I don't even know how to say it. Hypa something jail.
Is this not one of... okay, those things where to that point in the game, everything is so straightforward and you know where you are and you're like, I mean, aside from the beginning where it kind of warps you a couple places, but after that, you're just moving forward. You're moving from place to place to place. And then when an enemy, he nabs you, but I kind of thought my first playthrough that he had just killed me. And then you awake in this prison and you have to get out of it. And that is one of the parts where I was like, oh, Bloodborne. Oh, look at you, Bloodborne. You're throwing in these wrenches that you don't expect. And now you're like, where am I? And you're disoriented again. And you have to figure things out again. I love that so much.
Weirdly enough, I think I was kind of anticipating a gimmick like this because of Elden Ring. Not to spoil anything, but there's a certain kind of enemy that will like open its stomach and swallow you inside in Elden Ring, and it will do the same thing where it just wipes your health bar out and you think you've died, and then the loading screen begins, and all of a sudden you're somewhere else. And if you're not anticipating that, it's really disorienting. But it's funny that you reacted, Katie, positively to this. I was so intensely frustrated because all of a sudden the progress I thought I was making was null and void. I had to retrace my steps, and then when retracing them, I led myself out to this seemingly impossible boss, and I was so discouraged when I like left out and explored the area. I couldn't find the lantern, but it's really close to you. It just isn't in the intuitive direction. And then returning to that area later in the game made me feel so unsettled in a way that usually environmental exploration in these games doesn't do. And it's mostly just because the enemy variety changes, but that like some physical environment details are different as well. And obviously leading to the one reborn boss, but just very unpleasant, I think is the word I would put on that whole area in my mind. I don't have any like clever game associations, and more just get me out of here.
That is fair.
I didn't encounter this whole section you're talking about.
So there's this one enemy. I think one of the like I forget if it's one of the Yaragul. I don't remember.
It's
there's
in like
so many
the area
characters.
Leading to the Bloodstarved Beast, like kind of in that like same
in Old
town
Yarnum,
area.
Yes.
Yes.
There's an enemy
like,
that has a big sack on his back, and if there's this one attack move where if he grabs you, then you arrive in this jail prison. And you know what? I agree with you, Flora, in that I do remember on my first playthrough that place, once I got out of there, it was like this place that I didn't want to go back to. Yeah. That I had this unsettling that I was like, oh no, I'm not supposed to be there. That's a bad place. I don't want to go there. And then I don't think on my first playthrough I did very much, except for when you have to. At one point, you kind of go through that area, not quite into like the base prison area, but like above it, you do. Aside from that, I don't think I did. And now this time, I was like, this is nothing. I'm gonna rip through this prison. This doesn't. I don't care. Like, I had my own hubris, my own Bloodborne hubris. But yes, I understand what you mean. It does immediately make that association with you.
That's cool. There's a video on YouTube. Sorry, I was literally Googling Bloodborne jail, and there's a video titled Bloodborne, Where to Go If You Get Kidnapped in a Sack.
It's not obvious what to do, and there's a couple of different paths you can take that like either lead to a dead end or, like I said, to a boss, and then when you actually get out into the environment, like the actual city block, it's closed doors in every direction. What you have to do is you have to like run upstairs inside this like cathedral place and activate the lantern and get the hell out of there. But another degree of unsettling is that this game, when you do return to the area, it pushes you through the space in a different way, like a different direction that doesn't feel as familiar, and there's like a new shortcut you can use to get there. But the actual like lantern is cut, and you can't use it anymore. You can't transport yourself back to this place at a certain story point, where, like, if you try to warp there through the hunter's dream, you are unable to do it. You get, like, an error. But then you get there, and the lantern is no longer glowing. It's just dark. And I don't really know what the implications of this are. Like, that has to be a story thing. But maybe we should shift over in this direction soon. But, like, I have no idea what the story is in Bloodborne.
Same.
I couldn't tell you if you put it on a like standardized test 5-paragraph essay. I would say Bloodborne's about like violence and about like dying a lot and slowly getting better at things. Like that's my thesis. I have no clue what the story is.
I think I could write 2 lines about Bloodborne in that there's a blood. People thought they could get powers from blood, but then there was a disease in the blood, and that caused evil. That would be my
That's more than
essay.
I got.
Yeah.
That is the base.
Katie, am I accurate?
That, I mean, you know what? If you were to do a 2-sentence sum up, you're not wrong.
Hey!
That's right. It's
Bam.
my favorite story from FromSoft games because it is so grounded in the world and how institutions arise and like the mistakes that they make, and then when institutions double down on their mistakes, and then it just gets worse and worse, and they won't admit that they're wrong, and instead they create more branches of that institution, and then it becomes the culture of that place. It's so interesting.
That sounds awesome.
It's so cool. So so under Yharnam,
Sounds like the monarchy.
Except more ill-intentioned. But well, maybe I don't know. I'm not going to comment on this.
Obviously,
we're going to move on.
ill-intentioned.
Okay, quick version. There is a labyrinth dungeon thingy underneath Yharnam that one day people who were looking around down there found these oh my god, my brain's not working. The Great Ones. I'm right.
Okay.
I was right.
The Great Ones.
It's the Great Ones.
Okay.
They found these Great Ones, and they're like, oh my god, there's these gods down here. And then I have gaps because there's so much story that I can't remember it all because I'm not these YouTube geniuses. And basically they discovered that if they used this old blood from these old ones, that they could cure diseases and do all these great things. But there was basically 2 schools of thought. So there was the Bergenworth, the college, or I believe they call it a college or university or something, a school, essentially, where they're like, oh no, to understand these things and to elevate humanity and to reach the next level of humanity, we have to understand things. We need to gain knowledge. We need to gain eyes and insight into these things. And then we'll become like elevated humans. And then there was a student of the leader guy. Names escape me. But anyway, so there's the leader of Bergenworth. There's his students, Lawrence, who's like, no, but this blood is so powerful. So he starts using it and discovers it can cure diseases so that everyone thinks that's great, amazing. We're going to cure all these diseases. And people come from all over the world to have their diseases cured by this amazing blood. But guess what? It turns them into beasts. Oh no. But the church, so it is the healing church that is built around the old blood. They don't want to let go of this, essentially. They have established this, like, basically power of being this institution that leads this whole city. They start just branching off into these different sections of the church, including the hunters, who basically are just hunting down townsfolk who have turned into beasts to take them out so that people don't know that it's turning them into beasts. Crazy. So that's essentially what the hunters are. And then there's different sections. There's the, I forget if it's the choir or something. There's the one area that's trying to commune with the old ones. There's so much stuff. And then all of the enemies that you're encountering, depending on what they're wearing, will tell you which group that they associated with when they were still themselves. So if you kill someone wearing an old scholar uniform within the Nightmare of Mensis, you know that they were a student of Mensis, and that got just destroyed by what was happening to them. It's so good, and the storytelling has so many layers that you can just keep going down, which is why I think replays are so valuable for FromSoft games. It's because it doesn't get handed to you the first time. You get enough that it's interesting. They really encourage curiosity so much. I just love it so much. I could go on about there's more lore. There's so much more lore, but that's like the basic. There's like 5 more sections of the church, and there's so much.
That fascinating recount of the story is so fundamentally different than the experience I had playing this game. I know that there's that degree of depth and complexity to lore in all Souls games, but in particular Bloodborne, because I hear people rave about it and I see the 7-hour video essays on YouTube get recommended to me, and I've always resisted it because Souls games have always had kind of a mixed relationship with me. I think that sounds like one of the coolest video gaming stories you could name. Like, what you're describing is exactly the sort of political intrigue and like cultural critique and examination of human frailty through their psychology and the choices that they make, like through cognitive dissonance and insecurity of power and things like that. All of that is just 11 out of 10, totally my thing.
They burned down Old Yarnum because they messed it up so badly, because it was so overrun with beasts that it was over. And so they said, we'll just burn it down and we'll barricade it and pretend it never happened. But we're going to keep using the old blood because why not? But I understand where you're coming from, because Dark Souls, I am less interested in the lore because it feels less grounded to me, because it's more gods and monsters, and it feels more fantasy based, which I like. I like fantasy stories, but it doesn't have that same grounded feeling where I want to know all these characters and their motivations, because they're relatable motivations to me personally in Bloodborne.
Yeah, well, side note here, cut this if you want, but like, I imagine that your profession, Katie, probably has something to do with your degree of appreciation of all of those specifics. Do you know what I'm suggesting by saying that?
That's possible, yeah. I can understand that, yeah.
If a medical decision is brought down from on high and the powers that be have to enforce said medical decision, despite knowing on the front lines that those might be improper procedures or etiquette or whatever, that is probably an experience that you have more access to than either myself or Jacob.
Even just historically, how back through the centuries, how medicine has evolved and the mistakes that were made in the past and unethical decisions. There is a whole section in a part of the main game and a part of the DLC, which basically delves into like unethical experimentation on people and citizens and trying to like drive forward science and trying to attain this ideal, and the people that get kind of disregarded in that and get used, and how that relates to, like I said, like the history of the world that happened over and over and over again over centuries. So yeah, it's just so grounded in the real world that I find it so fascinating, but also has this layer of fantasy over top that makes it just more fun to dig into, and they can do anything with that, right?
Does a lot of this lore come out in like objects and notes in the world? Because I am not, like, I think of the Batman games, for example. Since I'm such a huge fan of the world, I go out of my way to like listen to tapes and get the Riddler trophies because I love the world. Where here, I don't think Again, I just wanted to finish this game to say I did it so I could laugh in Mike's face.
Shout out to Mike.
Look, I enjoy it. Shout out Mike Ruffalo. I enjoyed it to a certain degree. But, like, I don't think I really went out of my way, especially in the back half of the game. So I'm probably missed some NPCs. I know I missed some items that were hanging out in the world. There are limited cutscenes. But where is all the lore? Where is it? Where's it hiding?
A lot.
So definitely item descriptions. You're right about that. Like, I also don't pay attention to in-game documents ever. Like Control, for example, Ribity's Control. Like, everyone who loves that game says that if you read all the documents, it suddenly makes sense and it's great. I don't give a crap. I'm there for the action. And so, like, if the story doesn't want to show it to me and put it in my face, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist. When it comes to Bloodborne or other Souls games, I don't read anything, which is probably an issue. I also was astonished every time I spoke with people like Seto in our Discord is there are side quests in this game.
Yes.
Full stop. That I'm saying that like it's a realization. You're supposed to like knock on windows and talk to people through doors and stuff like that. And I did that like twice in the entirety of my playthrough.
Same.
I got nothing out of any of those exchanges. It was all cryptic, just fluff to add flavor text to the world. But apparently, kind of like what Katie was saying, a lot of these little sub-stories and descriptions enforce the thing that I and you, Jacob, completely missed. And I think that's going to be the fun value of going back over this game, like over time, like Katie was saying, a replay. I think that's exactly the value of it, is like playing the optional bosses, doing the side quests, like the things that you know that exist in the game now. Like there's a chapel you can go to in the game where you can send people back to this chapel. And I learned, much to my horror, that you can send the wrong people back to this chapel and they will slaughter everybody. Like, that's something preventable. I just didn't know that that would be a consequence. Anyway.
That, honestly, the whole chapel thing and the people that you meet at the beginning of the game, aside from the two girls who are the daughters of Father Gascoigne, other than that, those aren't my favorite side quest components, like the knocking on the windows and talking to the townsfolk, who most of whom are like, go away.
Yeah.
Go away, Hunter. I leave this place. Other than them, I always took more enjoyment out of just the side character, like the people that you can actually see, like Eileen the Crow, who is the most, can I say badass?
Sure. Yeah. That's PG.
That's PG. Eileen the Crow is the most badass hunter you could find in the entire game. She's amazing.
That's the one that killed me in the cathedral, right?
I don't
Maybe
know.
I'm wrong.
Did you try and fight her?
There was a crow hunter in Vicar Amelia. She just came straight up aggroed me when I entered the space.
Oh, yeah. It depends on what you did. Actually, if it's late game, did you go back later in the game?
I did. After beating Vicar Amelia, like, this hunter was just hanging out by themselves and was absolutely way stronger than I was. So I fought it like 5 times and then gave up.
I forget if that's
on.
Eileen. You can find her at multiple different places, and sometimes she's not aggro and sometimes she is. It depends on what point in the game you are and what's happened in the world. It's a whole thing. There's Albert, I believe his name's Albert, who had a mentor who wants to kill the Vile Bloods, who are basically vampires, who are trying to use the old blood to become immortal. And his mentor was fighting the Vile Bloods, and he died, and now he wants to avenge him. So he's talking about the Vile Bloods who live at Canehurst Castle, and you don't even know where that is. And if you find an item called the Summons to Canehurst, and if you read that description, it tells you, oh, if your carriage awaits to take you to Canehurst Castle, it is in Charnel Lane at the center. And if you go to that place with the summons, a cutscene happens and this carriage arrives, and then you can choose to go into it or not. And then it takes you to this optional area, which is Canehurst Castle, which is huge. And it has the Queen of the Vile Bloods who's still there, and it has an awesome, awesome boss. And then that completes Albert's story in a way where you have to do something and bring it back.
That's Martyr Lagaris is in that area?
Yes, Martyr Lagaris is intense. I noped out on him my first playthrough. I found myself at Canehurst. I didn't know what I was doing, and then I got killed like 5 times in a row, and I didn't complete that whole section. And then this time, no. I killed him real quick. But yeah, it's just like layers on layers on layers where you can choose how much you want to take part in. Like you two didn't, or have not yet so far, and got what you have gotten out of the game, and you don't have to even deal with that stuff, but it's there if you want to, and it's so impressive to me.
So hold on, it's a multiplayer element. It's another multiplayer element where you can write names and ranks of hunters inside of your register for later.
Basically, you can either join if and you don't even have to do the PvP. I almost always play these games offline because I just don't even want to deal with it. And I'm not really a PvP person. But if you join the Covenant of the Vile Bloods, then there are the Vile Bloods, and then there's the hunters who are trying to kill the Vile Bloods. And then, depending on if you kill enough Vile Bloods, you get these items, and then how many of those items you have establishes your rank within the Vile Bloods, and how many hunters you've killed, and it's a whole thing.
I also... I want to kind of like touch on this because the Covenant thing, I actually didn't even like, that might be a reason why that random hunter in the cathedral attacked me. Like, it might have just been like an allegiance based thing. I don't know if that's exactly how this works, but in Dark Souls 1, I'm pretty sure that system kind of exists where like I joined like the spider lady or whatever, and then I was kind of like worried about joining other ones for that reason. The other thing that you just sparked in my head is the fact that I didn't use multiplayer whatsoever in this game. I think one of the beautiful things in this game is seeing players' messages. Like, they're usually kind of playful trolls more than anything else, where they say like, beware of whatever, and it's like nothing. Or sometimes there's like something isn't like, when you turn the corner, like, hey, watch out, a barrel's gonna come running down, or just little like nice little interactions that make the world feel less isolating and hostile, because I think all of these games are kind of miserable to spend time in as far as just atmosphere goes. And I don't mean that as like a these games are bad statement. I mean as just like a I feel depressed when I play these games statement. But the thing that I mentioned about summons is I didn't summon anybody the entire playthrough, and I thought that was probably... I'm in the minority of players, I would guess. I know that the servers are not necessarily as active as they ought to be compared to when this game released, but my insight is in the 30s, and I haven't redeemed any Madman knowledge or anything like that. So I'm curious, because I think Jacob said that you summoned a ton of people. With one exception, with the there's like NPC summons you can find ahead of a boss. The spider boss, whose name I think Rom. There we go. I don't know why my brain went Ro. That little NPC I brought into the fight with me, and that was very helpful. But that was the only time I summoned anything whatsoever, and never summoned a real player.
So I played online the entire time. My insight, consuming all Madman's knowledge, ended in the 20s. I pulled in other players to help me with 3 bosses. Shadow of Yharnam, Bloodstarved Beast, and Vicar Amelia. I feel like as I got further in the game, it was more difficult to find players to match with.
That makes sense.
I think for Rom, I ended up finding someone once, but we didn't end up beating the boss. So they got killed. I pulled an old hunter in, and then we just died. I did have, and it was probably, and Katie, I think you were watching me when this happened, when a player invaded my game, because there are other hostile players that you can ring the Sinister Bell in your game, which is an item that you can get from one of the shops, like in the Hunter's Dream. So you can actually, and everyone probably knows this game is 7 years old, you can invade other people's games. So I had someone, when I rang my bell, that invaded my game who was hostile towards me, and it was probably the scariest moment in this game, because I was running, I'm like, oh my god, this is because they don't start right on top of you. They start somewhere in the same general vicinity. So my thought was like, oh, I need to run to the boss, because if I get to the boss, then I'll be fine. But I watched them. There was one point I had to climb a ladder, and I don't remember what boss this was, but I climbed a ladder, and I saw, like, on the ground, this player realized that I was climbing the ladder, and I escaped, but it was very scary.
Oh my god.
The pure level of panic in his voice was amazing. All of a sudden,
oh my god, there's a player in my game.
No.
Oh my god, there's a hostile player in my game.
Times 20.
I did that with Elden Ring.
Oh,
yeah.
every time that happens,
a lot of
pure panic.
I had blood echoes, and I'm like, I don't want you to take my blood echoes away, because I had probably 30 or 40,000 blood echoes, and I'm just like, this player's gonna murder me, and I don't know how it works, Katie. Maybe you do. Can they steal your blood echoes, or is it more just like an annoyance where they're gonna kill you and your blood echoes are gonna be left on the ground?
I think I like I said, I've never really messed with the PvP because I just don't want to. I don't want that in my game, so I take it out. But I don't think that they would take them. I think they're just messing with you. I think it's people who just enjoy hopping into people's games and killing them, and doing a gesture over top of their dead body.
Yeah, I think you're right now that I just did a quick goog. But yeah, I don't think I could have made it through without those early game help.
Instead of summons, I want to talk, since you mentioned the same boss here, about Shadow of Yharnam. I want to confess to something, but also like share it in an exciting way. This boss, as you mentioned it, I thought to myself, that would be a perfect boss to summon somebody, to simply distract this group of, like, for lack of a better term, 3 ring wraiths who have different weapons, and they're all just kind of... I think the object of that boss is to separately fight them, if I had to guess, but having seen you whinge a little bit, Jacob, about how much trouble you had, I went ahead and typed in Shadow of Yharnam ahead of the fight. And so I was kind of nervous before I went through like the fog door area. And I went ahead and looked up, and one of the top results on Google was Shadow of Yharnam cheese. And so I looked it up, and there was like a 2-minute video, which is just short enough to be tempting. And so I found a way that you can clip through the environment, break your way into the boss arena, and kill them, and they won't fight back. So
What?
Yeah. So it's a pain in the butt, to be clear. If you're going to do this, be ready to be patient, which I usually am not. But I fought this boss like 3 or 4 times, and it totally wrecked me. I didn't make any substantial progress on it. And I thought, okay, yeah, this is the wall that I'm going to hit with Bloodborne, and I'm going to bring my, like, dog head down, just like trailing through, tail between the legs when I come into the podcast recording. So... Shadow of Yharnam cheese, you find on your way down, there's these giant boars, and there's some sort of like bonfire areas leading in the path towards the door. Mm-hmm. If you find a specific rock, you can climb up onto this rock, and then you have to jump, which involves sprinting and then timing the button press, jump up onto the invisible environment, do it again in a different direction, roll through an invisible wall. You have to find a ledge at a tree root that if you make the slightest mistake, you will fall through the map to your death, and it takes like 3 minutes to respawn entirely. And it's just like this endless cycle of hell. But if you get it right, you then jump up inside of the tree on top of another invisible wall, roll down into the boss arena, and their health bars do not spawn, and you can just slaughter them. They won't react.
That sounds 10 times harder than the boss. That
so
sounds so hard.
It was. And I actually ended up giving up because I was frustrated, and I was like, I'm just going to tough this thing out. I'm just going to fight this thing normally. I found somehow else, or no, it was Seto in the Discord. Sorry for so many shout outs here, but hopefully this will be useful to hear the correspondence in the Discord. But I was told that there's another cheese, and I didn't know there was another cheese. So I looked up the other cheese, and it involves a gate clip where you find a specific headstone, you find a rock, you set your character up, you turn it 90 degrees to the left, and you open, like, I guess perpendicular to the gate. The gate is on your right-hand side. Your character is facing the wall of rocks. You move just to a position where it gives you the X prompt to enter the boss arena, and then you will open it, move your character sideways, and it does the same thing. No health bars, no fighting back. And it took me about 6 or 7 tries at this gate, but it was much easier and less frustrating. So I went there, entered, got killed a few times, and then slaughtered the boss with no fight back. So I cheated. And,
you know
and it wouldn't be a FromSoft game if I didn't cheat, but but I couldn't mod the game for difficulty or damage purposes, so this was my path through the game.
It took time and determination, so I kind of admire it, actually. Yeah, I use a couple NPC summons. First, a couple of them, like ROM, I use the NPC summon both times. All 3 of my playthroughs I have, because I feel like it sometimes. I like someone to just distract for a little bit.
Yeah, the distracts make things easy.
Yeah, why not? Most of the time I don't, but now and then. And I did try ROM one. I was like, I'll try him once by myself. And I was like, nah, I don't feel like doing this a whole number of times. So, yeah, I did the NPC summon. And for that one, and also the one that you were talking about earlier, the one with a bunch of dead bodies attached.
Oh,
the one reborn.
Yes, that one. Also that one.
Yeah. The corpse human.
Yeah.
That gets
Or the
birthed of a
monster.
moon shadow, which is like one epic origin story. Can we talk about ROM for a second? Because
Yes.
I don't know that we've ever
no.
talked about this, but I am deathly arachnophobic. Like, if a spider crawled across my computer screen right now, I would have to call for help for someone else to kill it for me. I am just terrified of spiders, always have been. It's a debilitating, irrational fear, like a true phobia, but not one that I've like sought psychological help for. It's just I'm always lucky enough when I encounter a spider, someone else is nearby and they can do the thing. So in Bloodborne, there's Rom, and you find on the ocean of all places this boss, which is kind of a weird arena. But I was directly reminded of the later game Elden Ring, where there's I think it's Renala is the fight, which was just like one of the most memorable fights out of Elden Ring. And so I'm already bought into the atmosphere, and I see kind of in the distance this big lump like a potato, and I'm like, okay, what is this thing? And as I approach it, all of a sudden, realistic spiders, giant ones, probably
like
3
20
feet
of them.
tall. Yeah, like a whole horde of them appear, and you have to not only do damage on this boss, but then fend off these little like side minions as well. And I struggle to articulate how badly I reacted to this. It wasn't a controller drop, turn off the console moment, but it was just like out loud by myself, only person in my house, nope, 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 that sort of energy. And I had to take a break as soon as that fight was over.
No.
It was a pure put the controller down, turn the game off for a few hours, regroup, and steel yourself mentally thing. In many games, I expect, especially in horror, that there will be spiders, and I'm not like... there's something reassuring about it being digital, and I have that acknowledgement in the screen that like it's not going to crawl through and really come at me, but it still affected me a lot. And I imagine that's not the case for most people. Like, I have a really good friend who they are deathly afraid of snakes in the same way that I'm afraid of spiders. And to me, fear of snakes, not a problem. I love snakes. Handling them is fun. If they weren't kind of annoying to take care for, I would have a snake. But spiders are my Horcrux, for lack of a better term. And I just really, really struggle with that. I thought that was going to be the wall. I really did. I thought, after putting the controller down, turning off the console, I cannot finish Bloodborne. I am too scared. This is too much. And then, for whatever reason, went back through, summoned the person, first tried him after that, and it was fine. So I'm glad I got through that, but it was probably the most uncomfortable a game has made me feel in a long time.
The thing that I had forgotten about Rom, and I was just like, Flora, Rom, just like, imagine they're a potato or a big rock.
Totally is potato-like.
They're very potato-like, but it's the minion spiders that when I was, because last time we played Doki Doki, I had a similar nope moment with the thing that happens in that game.
Big twist.
And you were very supportive of me in that situation, and I feel like I wasn't as supportive to you.
Oh, what?
I was just like, Rom's a potato. You're or no, I actually thought you were talking about the spider later. I thought there was a spider later in the game that you were talking about. Oh. There's like this giant spider in a
yeah, a little bit.
There's some that dropped from a ceiling that I found.
Yes.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But
those also suck.
That's what I.
Yes.
Yeah, but I thought that's what you're talking about. So I'm like, oh, just like, don't look, run away, like, to the outside. And I thought that's what you're talking about, but I forgot that Rom, not a huge potato, has so many small spiders around them. And the contrast with the water, you literally can't avoid them.
Yeah, well, like, I have been freaked out by video game spiders as far back as like Ocarina of Time. There's like, I think they're called like Skulltulas or something.
Yeah.
You have to like hook shot them and stuff. Those goofy cartoon ones, they're not even really like aggressive. They're just in your way, like little obstacles. Those freak me out. And so to see something that is like much closer to photorealistic, and I just, it was too much. I did not need that, but I see why it's here in this game. This game, I think it's kind of curious to hear this game described as a horror game, but it quickly becomes grotesque in a way that, and I would include these sort of creature horrors in the grotesque, that I don't think I was prepared for, having not seen anything. I thought it was just like, oh, werewolves, oh, vampires, oh, murder and death and blood poison lore stuff. Had no idea that it was going to play on like base instincts of fears.
Yeah. It's Lovecraft. It's fine. No, it's like Scarecrow in Nolan's Batman scary.
That's a great analogy for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Rom's a big moment too. Jacob didn't really believe it. I was like, oh, this is a big moment. Jacob's like, is it? Was it?
What do you mean big moment?
I'm like, look around. Because Rom, the vacuous spider,
context?
is obscuring what is actually happening in the world and the actual state of Yharnam.
Oh,
And then
so that's why you have the illusion fall? where you like roll off the bridge and you
Yes.
think you're gonna like fall in the water, but it's actually like a platform. That's like an illusion thing that the spiders created.
I think so. But also, once you've killed Rom, the illusion over Yharnam is gone, and you can see what is going on. And you can see, the blood moon descends. You can see what's happening. You can see the small, I forget if they're small amygdalas or minor amygdalas, or there's a word for them, that are on the buildings looking down. Yes.
I hate
those are like mini great ones who are hanging out there now, that are like lording over everything. And fun fact, so we talked about insight earlier. If you get your insight high, just in general throughout the game, if your insight is above a certain levels, you will perceive more things because you have more eyes, you have more insight. So if your insight is pretty high, you'll hear the crying from like Murgo throughout in other places in the game. But the big one is if it is above 40 before the blood moon descends, you will see the lesser amygdalas, that's what they are. The lesser amygdalas over Cathedral Ward before the red moon descends. Because your insight is high enough, you can perceive them. So you'll be walking back and you'll go, oh my god, what is that thing? And you didn't even descend the blood moon yet. Also, did anyone encounter this? You don't even have to perceive them for them to affect you. Because I was being super thorough and exploring and looking at everything I possibly could. And then I was going around Cathedral Ward, and I thought I saw like a little glint at the one corner of it. And I walked over there, and I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" And all of a sudden, this hand
picked up
appeared out of nowhere and grabbed me up and went and like crushed me. And I was like, "Oh my!" And I knew that later on there are these things up there. So I'm like, "Oh, they're already there." I didn't know that they were already there, and then I just couldn't see them. I thought that they just like came about. But no, everything is already there. You just can't see it yet.
That's so much worse to know they've been there the whole time.
By like an invisible hand. Like I could see essentially like a spell, and there was just like in the corner of one of the cemeteries, I think in Cathedral Ward, there's like a little spell going off near the fence. Yeah. And I went to investigate because I think there's an item right near there. So I'm like, ooh, piece of candy to go and get the item. And I got picked up, and I had no idea what had picked me up to kill me. And it was, I guess I'm not going to go over there. I guess I just don't know anything about this game and don't know how to play. So nope. Yeah. Not going near there.
Wow.
Oh.
That was one of the lesser amygdalas.
After the blood moon, I did message you essentially with the amygdalas and just sent you like a what are those in our group chat when I realized they could one-shot you.
Yeah, he goes, what are those big things on the buildings? Is that what you're talking about? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then a few minutes later he goes, the ones that can laser eye one-shot you? I'm like, yep, those are the ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of things in this world that can just one-shot you.
Yes.
I think that's characteristic of the From experience that I've gone through. Is I think being one-shotted is usually a sign that you're not ready to deal with something yet. Not always, of course, but as a good rule of thumb, like if something is reliably one-shotting you and you have no chance of survival, you either need to become stronger or come back later.
My instant reaction to getting one-shot is just to laugh now. Because I love these games. Because to me, these games are fun now. Like, they're just so much fun. So if I get one shot, I just burst out laughing. And I'm like, wow, okay, let's try again.
Mm-hmm. The thing that consistently one-shotted me, talking about bosses, so Mikolash literally, surprisingly, took me probably 20 to 25 times to beat. Wow. And that was the only boss where I think I probably did most bosses in like under 10 tries. Mm-hmm. I think the first boss, I just didn't know how to Bloodborne. So the Cleric Beast, that's optional. The Cleric Beast I probably did 20 times. But Mikolash had arcane blasts that on their own, one missile wouldn't one-shot you. But based on how they were shot out and based on how you were moving around the room, if two of them hit you, then they could one-shot you. Mm-hmm. So that's one instance where I'm like, maybe one shot sometimes. Even like the Murgo's Wet Nurse, they had combos that could one shot you. Yeah. Where I was just like, I'm probably properly leveled for this, or a smidge under leveled for this, but I just need to avoid. Like,
Yeah.
I just need to take it way slower.
You get caught in a loop, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I can't get out of this, and then you're dead.
Yep. Yep.
It's interesting that you mentioned this in terms of like which bosses you've got stuck on as well. I mean, you have a few more under your belt than I do, but with the exception, I don't remember if I talked about this in our first record. I know I mentioned that I had encountered Father Gascoigne, but I hadn't actually I don't think I had overcome him at that point in time, if memory serves. That was the only boss that actually gave me significant trouble where I was repeatedly going back. And I think one of the reasons is the boss run up there is just so tedious and involved. We have to like bait people and get the boulder rolling and all that stuff. But I probably fought him 30 to, I don't want to exaggerate, probably 30 times. The other bosses, almost without exception, I killed probably on my second attempt on average, almost everything. I first tried a number of bosses. I did under 5 attempts on almost everything. And I think 2 is my consistent number where I find the boss, it does something surprising like explode with poison or have a second phase or whatever. That thing surprises me and kills me, and I didn't have time to like create space or heal or whatever. And then I would go back and second try it almost always. And that's not like a humble brag in the sense of like, because I think I'm also in the camp of being bad with Bloodborne, even though that statement is now redacted. But I, generally speaking, with the bosses, did not think that any of them were necessarily hard. Shadow of Yharnam asterisk on that because I cheated. But when it comes to when I think back on Dark Souls or I think back on Elden Ring, there are a number of bosses I would put above what I've experienced in Bloodborne so far. In fact, I will go as far now as to say Bloodborne is the easiest FromSoft game that I've played. I feel that way pretty confidently.
Katie was right.
It is. It's the easiest one. Guys, I don't know, something about the pace of the combat and the way that you can get health back and how much health vials you have. It's not that hard. And if you get stuck on something where you're just like, I have the wrong approach, then like I said on the part 1, then you just check a guide and you're like, oh, this is what I'm doing wrong. Like, this is what I have to do when this happens. And now I'm good. But no, Bloodborne's not that hard. It's not. It's deceiving. It looks hard because it's very dark and, you know, ominous and all this stuff. But and if you approach things wrong, yes, you will get killed instantly. If you do, if you go about it the wrong way. But it's not that hard. For me, my first playthrough of this for this podcast, where I did everything essentially. The only ones that I really had trouble with were a couple of the DLC bosses. The final DLC boss is hard. It is difficult. It took me a good... The Orphan of Kos, yes. Very difficult. It reminded me more so of like a fast Elden Ring boss, like a not large hulking one, but one of the faster ones. That one gave me some trouble. That was probably a good like 10 tries. Jacob's making a face. Wait,
what's your face, Jacob? I'm watching video of this boss. I'm watching video of this boss.
Yeah, it's tough. Does
it have like a blood club?
It is a umbilical cord blood club. Cause sure, why not? Because we play into this whole thing of these great ones, and it was like a great one born out of a great one, and there's a lot of things about like birth and mothers, and there's a lot of that throughout the whole game, and the great ones trying to like impregnate some of the women of Yharnam to create more great ones, and a lot of that stuff.
Weirdly enough,
this boss has so much reach. Sorry, go ahead.
When I spoke earlier about not knowing anything about the story, I meant that sincerely, but one of the themes that I felt like I picked up on in this game was motherhood and like a complicated relationship with it. It's just now occurring to me as I'm speaking, Bloodborne as a name. I've never thought about it. Like, is this game making a commentary on womanhood / motherhood, like directly, or is that more of just like an atmospheric thing that I
think it's more just like they're all born of the blood, like they're all born the air. Like, I think it's more like, I don't know, it's up for interpretation, I guess, but I think it's just like they're using the old blood in like this situation, and I think one of the early on in the game, someone says like, "Oh, we are born of the blood, we die by the blood, such and such," and I don't know exactly. I don't know if they're trying to be super specific about it or if they're just purposefully being vague. I don't know. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
recurring theme for sure. And a lot of the
Can I
NPC
ask-
women get
Exactly.
later on in the game end up getting impregnated with great ones, and then you can kill them to get umbilical cords, and it gets dark.
That's what I was gonna ask because again, we're spoiling Bloodborne.
Yes.
There are 3, and Flora,
4.
Are you okay if I go in on this?
I meant to say this earlier. Spoil as much as you want to talk about. Like, no
Okay.
holds barred. I think listeners as well. Like, this is our second podcast. You've had 2 warnings. I'm just a little slow. So talk about anything. I'm so curious.
Are there 3 endings or 4?
3
I think
endings.
3?
Okay, there are 3 endings. So there's 3. So there are essentially you can get to Murgo's Wet Nurse, and if you beat Murgo's Wet Nurse, you're given an offer by
German.
the first hunter, German,
German.
where he either offers to kill you and take you out of this nightmare, or you refuse his offer and you have to fight him. So the first is you accept his offer, he essentially guillotines your head and you're taken out of the hunter's dream. The second is you fight him. The third is you don't accept his offer, you fight him, and you have these 3/3 of umbilical cord. So there are these items that are like 1/3 of an umbilical cord. And I think just playing the game, you get 1 of the 3. But there are 2 others somewhere in the world, and you fight the true final boss if you have all 3 pieces of the umbilical cord, but I don't know what that has to do with anything. What significance do those items have?
So they are the umbilical cords of a great one, more or less.
Okay.
So if you use 3 of them, so basically I'm pretty sure ingest 3 of them. There are 4 throughout the whole game. You only need 3 of them.
Oh, there are 4.
So if you use 3 of them, then once you have fought German and you've won, the moon presence that's up by the blood moon descends down and basically tries to either, I don't know if it tries to eat you or try to take you in to make another child, to make another great one. I'm not sure. But because you've taken in these 3 umbilical cords, you basically have great one spirit or great one in you, and you kind of repel it back, and then you end up fighting the moon presence that has come down, and that's the final boss. And then once you beat him, you are basically a slug on the ground that the doll picks up, because you are now a great one. You've ascended to be a great one. Yes.
But you're just a slug.
Yes. Those 2 boss fights, awesome. As final boss fights, I'm too excited. I've lost my breath 5 times already.
That's awesome.
For final boss fights, those 2 are so great to cap off the game, because I find Murgo's Wet Nurse to be very easy, because you really just have to sidestep behind them and then hack at them, and they're not very hard. And I don't know, I like the look of them, and I like their fight moves and everything, but German and the Moon Presence are just top tier. Love them.
I'm most interested in seeing how Jacob reacted to the endings here, not just because you suggested you took the easy way out, but FromSoft endings, in my experience, are always bittersweet, trade-offs, sacrifices, where the world is not saved necessarily. It is either restored to how it was in some capacity before you entered it, or it is arguably worse than before you found it, and your efforts are either for naught or you become part of the problem.
You're right. You never fix the thing that's going on. In this case, the 3 endings, you either are killed and exit the dream, which I don't know that that's good or bad. It's kind of neutral. Or
You save yourself.
What's that?
You save yourself, really.
Kind of, I guess. Yeah, kind of. You're just I'm done. I'm going to leave this. Or you fight German, and then you basically take German's place as residing over the Hunter's Dream. Or you kill the Moon Presence and become a great one, which I guess is good. I don't know. You're a weird, evil demon god. So, no.
Slug.
I I'm gonna be a demon god. Just give me time. I'm still a baby slug.
Well, it sounds like this is exactly the same thing that happens at the end, and I will be vague. I don't want to spoil the other games. Dark Souls and Elden Ring, where you kind of... It's structurally identical what the endings are doing. And I find that surprising, only because I think that a lot of the DNA in Souls games is copy-paste in some sense, where like even the UI looks identical in some cases to other games. The mechanics are all the same. The combat is very similar, etc. And it's interesting / surprising to me to hear that, like, structurally, Bloodborne does the same thing at the end. I don't know what I'm expecting of FromSoft, but the fact that they kind of end everything in the same place is I think, maybe part of why people feel so, like, dare I say, cultishly about these games, where, like, you kind of know what narrative fodder you're getting into in the same way that when I pick up the next Yakuza game, for example, I know that I'm ending up with, like, a shirtless rooftop brawl.
Yeah.
Like no matter what. Shirts are coming off, men are fighting, that's Yakuza every time. I feel like people probably like that consistency.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it, because I am a sucker for a tragedy. That is my favorite kind of story, if I had to, like, find a genre of narrative. But it's kind of... I'm really interested, because what I would choose to do, having not done it yet, is see if I could find those umbilical cords and find, like, the true final boss or whatever. That sort of thing is way more interesting to me than what you're describing of just, like, oh, just die and just, like, end the game soon.
It was kind of anticlimactic, which is how I felt my first playthrough. I was like, so that's the end? Like, when the credits rolled, I was like, oh, I beat the game. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, I suppose. And it didn't feel right, but also it was my first time ever. And I was like, I'll take it and run.
Yeah.
There are these threads that connect all the Soulsborne games where there's just a few of them. Like you said, just the general structure. And then there are also some weapons that overreach. There's the Moonlight Greatsword. I'm messing up
I
the
stuck with
name.
my original weapon the whole game.
Yeah.
I did too, but you can find that Moonlight Greatsword in the DLC, and that is a consistent weapon throughout all the Souls games and Elden Ring.
Oh.
And also, you can find patches. Patches!
really? Oh,
and I
that's
didn't know
cool.
he was here. And then I
Is he
found
also
him.
a merchant?
I think if you follow through on a couple of things, then he can be. I think I'm not certain on that, but I didn't think he was in the game because I had not found him previously, and
would
then
not
I
expect that.
stumbled upon him, and I was like, "It's Patches!" And you're right; it is a thing that makes us happy. That makes fans of these games happy. That just these little overlaps that kind of reward you as being a fan, but it's not fan service. Like it's not like overreaching. I mean, it is, but it's not to the point that it's negatively impacting the game. Like it's not beating you over the head, but it's this little nugget that you find that you're like, oh, there's Patches, that little devil.
I wanted to ask about weapons.
Yes.
Flora, you answered my question. I stayed with the saw cleaver for a lot of it, and then the hunter axe for a lot of it as well. So I basically had my saw cleaver up to 8 or I think +8 or +9, and then I had my hunter axe up to +7, and I was just using my hunter axe when I needed distance from the enemy, where I would put it in its longer mode and then use my visceral attack just to keep enemies at bay. But I wanted to know what y'all did, because I saw people with swords and I saw the cane, and I wanted to try, but I also just again wanted to go through the game. I actually had a comment about what we said earlier as well. I just took the ending I took because I wanted sweet release. I literally was living my like in-game character's life where I'm like, I want sweet release from this world. Just release me, baby. And that's why I just took the easy way out. Mm-hmm. Weapons. Sorry.
Small amendment to the weapon thing, because I blanketly said that I stuck with the cleaver. I also alternated midway through the playthrough towards the end of where I'm at right now with, I think it's Tonitrus. I don't know how to say this. I keep in my brain saying Tonitritis bolt like Spy Family, but in reality, the weapon itself was just a big lugging mace that has like electric charge to it, so it does elemental damage on top of everything. But then I got to a point with my cleaver where I found some sort of blood gem fortification where I could add fire damage to it. So it was doing elemental damage, it was healing me twice, and it was, of course, boosted with its attack, and not to mention the upgrades. Those were my two primary weapons. I picked up some other weapons as well, and I went on this fool's errand. I looked up most powerful Bloodborne weapons once I realized I was panicking and wasn't going to finish. So I was like, all right, let me find something that's like broken or overpowered. I'm sure there's one. So apparently there is one, the Whirligig Saw. And it is a DLC weapon. And I did not feel like it was a wise decision to buy the DLC, explore the new area, get the weapon, bring it all the way back, upgrade it, and whatever. So I stuck with my opening weapon. It was quicker than the Tonitrus thing. And of the other weapons I picked up, I just chose not to upgrade any of it.
Yeah, I messed around with a few weapons. I got the Whirligig, and I messed around with that for a little bit, and I had a little bit of fun. But at the end of the day, my Hunter's Axe, I know that thing inside and out. I know exactly how to use it. I know if I dash forward and I attack, I'll do a thrust. If I do this, like if I take a side, I know everything. I know the exact range. I know how fast it'll take. Like it's my buddy, and I know everything about it. And it's my friend. So I messed around with some other stuff, but I ended up just going back to my favorite weapon.
Mm-hmm. I know that you gave some really sage advice early on that some of the weapons have like not secret, but like under the radar like abilities. So like it has serrated damage, the saw cleaver, and serrated is good against like a lot of the early bosses, like Gascoigne as a werewolf or a beast, Vicar Amelia, cleric beast. Like you get 20% extra damage.
Oh wow!
So it's really helpful early on, which is why I don't think I said this on the other podcast. I started the game with a Hunter Axe. I was getting nowhere, so I like started a new file. I'd only played for maybe 2 hours and I've gotten absolutely nowhere. So I retried with the saw cleaver, and I just used this because it's a lot faster than the Hunter Axe, and it really helped me like get through those first couple hours. I ended up buying it again because I liked it, but I relied on that saw cleaver.
I think the thing I want out of my FromSoft weapons is speed more than anything else.
Yeah.
I felt this with Elden Ring, which is why I veered away from physical attacks as quickly as possible in that game, and I was doing a lot of magic because I could keep distance, which felt like even though I'm making slow attacks, at least I'm able to manage my position in relation to these attacks, and so I'm less at risk of dying. And then with Dark Souls, I went with a longsword build of some variety, and it was just fundamentally slow and frustrating, and I never found something that like matched the speed that I was looking for. But the saw cleaver in Bloodborne, I think, is kind of perfect in how it feels just moving around with it. Just quickly able to put 3, 4, sometimes 5 attacks in a row before needing to create that space with an enemy. And again, I think learning... I think I said this about Gascoigne. Like, Gascoigne was the hardest to me because of how quick he moved. He would just boom, attack, boom, attack, boom, attack. And there's no time in that fight to create that distance, even though it is a very environmentally driven fight. The thing that I got comfortable with in Bloodborne later was like the Tonitrus thing, which is much slower. I felt like I was able to do twice the damage with one hit that I was with the saw cleaver, and it really had to depend on the boss and like how rapid those attacks were coming at me. So, for example, like the one Reborn, basically no attacks, minus like the random sludge poison thing that happens. You have like some flailing limbs that are just the easiest thing in the world to avoid.
Yep.
But then there's like, again, the other end of the spectrum, like your Gascoignes, where if I tried to use that weapon on Gascoigne, I think I'd get wrecked. And so I found that really interesting that Bloodborne, like, I became comfortable with even things like the interrupt with the gun, like just like stunning things. Some of the later hunters and bosses, I was able to just like snipe them just get them down real quick. And I got way more comfortable with that than I was anticipating as well.
It took me a while to understand that gun was used for parrying. Like I just didn't get it.
Well, you can upgrade it and you can get other ones. Like I found a cannon that I didn't have enough skill to wield because I put all of my stats. We should probably talk about stats, but I put all of them in the first 3, like vitality, endurance, and strength.
Yep.
I didn't touch anything else. I literally put 100% of stats on those first 3. But the cannon was tempting because I saw the damage it could do and the effects it could have, and I had enough like shards or whatever to upgrade the thing. I just didn't want to suddenly like divert where I was investing my stats because I've been burned in the past with Dark Souls games or just Soulsborne games more generally, where with the exception of Elden Ring, I don't know that you can respec in Dark Souls 1. I'm not sure. But in Elden Ring, I respec'd and like got to move my things around once with like a tier, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that you can do it either. You can do it many times. Elden Ring is super generous with respecs.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I did same thing. Vitality, endurance, strength, and then sometimes skill, because I was using the Hunter's Axe, and sometimes if you check, because as that stat goes up, it has less of an effect. Like there are kind of tiers to how
they cap at like 30 or 40.
Yeah, or like there are soft caps and there are hard caps. So at certain points, upgrading my skill actually helped do more damage than upgrading my strength at that moment. But mainly those three, yes, were where I focused everything. Yeah, if you kind of spread yourself too thin and try and be master of everything, you know, what is it? Master of none? What's the... Help me out.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Thank you, friends. That will screw you over very much.
Yeah, Katie, you gave me that sage wisdom, and I followed your wisdom of like, I ended up having vitality a little higher than the rest, but it was like vitality, endurance, strength. I think endurance and strength were in the 30s, and maybe vitality was in the like high 20s, and vitality was in the low 30s. By the time I finished the game. And then sidearms, I literally stuck to the Hunter's Pistol. I tried the blunderbuss because one of the boss fights, I was watching Griffin McElroy's from Polygon's boss breakdowns because I thought that they were really, like, they were short and sweet, and Griffin is a sweet boy. So I wanted to hear his take on it. And he had said, hey, use the Hunter blunderbuss for one of, like, maybe Vicar because it stuns. But I just, like, I knew how to use the parry to use visceral attacks on the... like common enemies, but I just had never figured it out on like bosses. I used it to just get some damage. If I like when I was with Murgo, I was just like using it to get a little bit of damage here and there.
I actually found it much easier to use these gun interrupts on bosses than your common enemy. And I think that's true because there's so much more diversity of your common enemies than there is bosses. Typically speaking, as I discovered a few hours into Bloodborne, my strategy moving into boss fights is simply watch what happens, try to bait a few attacks, and then just like run away real quick and just see what the effect of those attacks are and how likely, like, it's all RNG, but what the variety of those attacks are going to look like and everything like that. But once I figured it out, I got pretty aggressive with how I wanted to approach each fight. And like Vicar Amelia, again, back to like the surprise thing, if she hadn't like healed in the middle of the fight and I suddenly felt like, oh no, I was so close, I have to like suddenly like go in for the kill, I got like, there's a term in Soulsborne communities that I've heard, it's called greed. Obviously we all know what greed means, but like in Soulsborne games, greed is where you see the boss's health bar chip away, and you start to feel better about yourself. And you're like, yeah, I got this. This is within range. And you see that last, like, 20% or less. And you think, oh, this is it. I don't care. I'm going to tank a hit. I'm going to drop a few extra strikes here, and I'm going to win. And then that's when you die. Every time. So... it felt like a micro version of that because I suddenly felt like, oh no, I'm going to have to do this entire fight again. She doesn't actually heal her entire bar, but it was enough of like, I saw it start going back up and I was like, oh no, I need to stop this animation. I need to like make this character stunned and then finish it off. But anyway, my mistake.
It warms my heart so much to see Jacob saying, yeah, I know what that is about Soulsborne games. I feel like you've been not quite converted, but a little bit. I feel like you're a little bit there.
Izzy,
it felt good, didn't it? Okay, when you beat Mikolash, was it not one of the best feelings ever? It's one of the best feelings ever. Yeah. That's the thing with how difficult the games are, and people knock how difficult they are, but that leads into that feeling of accomplishment when you get over that hurdle, and that's kind of the point of the games, right? Is like that, nothing feels better than that. Like, you end up, like, yelling and jumping up and celebrating, and it feels so good.
I think back to all the gaming that I've done maybe in the past, like, five or so years, because I started tracking every game that I finished maybe 5 or 6 years ago. No, actually, I've been doing it for 10 years because I'm crazy. And I can't think of a game like Returnal Returnal's up there for like feeling accomplished, but I can't think of another game, at least in the last 5 years, where I've felt as accomplished finishing it, because it was much more difficult than the average game I play. It is not 2 times harder. It is 5 times harder than the average game I play, and I'm just so proud of myself for finishing it and like not giving up, because there was a lot of times where I wanted to give up. There were a lot of times I wanted to give up and I didn't give up. And like I said, I don't think I've been converted at the Church of Bloodborne. I'm not about to go like you, Katie, and play Sekiro and play Dark Souls and play, Elden Ring. I have a copy of Elden Ring, so I'm probably at some point in the next couple months going to open it.
You should absolutely play Elden Ring.
But I'm not going to do that to myself, because that's not the kind of... I derive enjoyment out of games. Like, I love an Uncharted game, right? Because Uncharted game is like...
Popcorn.
Story, like hijinks, popcorn, and like fun, right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what Bloodborne is. I love that I played it. I appreciate very much that everyone pushed me to do it. I'm so happy I did it. I appreciate them. And I don't have anything bad to say about Bloodborne or the Souls series. It's just not for everyone.
It's not. And that's okay.
It's not. And that's okay.
I think that's the case with almost all games. Almost all games are not for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like Call of Duty Warzone, that's not for me. It's not for me. That's okay. It doesn't make it a bad game. It's just that's not made for me. And there are so many games out there that there are games for you. So I don't know. I've never thought of it as a bad thing that like it's not for everyone, because I think that's just a reductive argument, because like I said, no games are for everyone. I don't really think that they exist. I mean, maybe, I don't know, even Candy Crush. Some people are like, I don't like Candy Crush. It's not for everybody, even like at the base level. So it would be nice if we were going to just a little crack in the accessibility conversation. I would appreciate if they did things that, say, like Naughty Dog has done recently, as far as people who have issues with their vision or with their hearing or things like that. But as far as like, I don't think that it needs toggles for, invincibility toggles or this or that. Or extra health, because that's in the game though. You can find that, you can get that item. I wouldn't be mad
I'm always team accessibility. Like,
I wouldn't be mad if they put it in. I wouldn't be mad. Like, that's fine. I don't care. It's not going to affect my gaming, experience in any way. So fine, if they want to add it in. But I'm not going to mad. Yeah, that's not there. I don't know. That's where I'm at. Flora, you're dying to get in here.
Jumping out of her skin.
Yes.
Go. Several fingers were held up. I don't know. This is going to be a meandering train wreck of thoughts, but I'll do my best. One of the points that I need to respond to, basically, is the supposition that Bloodborne or Soulsborne bosses in particular give you a feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction. I personally never feel that. Like, people talk about the rush you get in Dark Souls games or whatever, where you beat the thing that's been killing you 5 times, and then you suddenly like have this like unparalleled like sort of euphoric
it's euphoria.
Feeling.
It's the best feeling ever. Yes.
It does not happen to me at all. It's weird. And I wonder if that's because I'm someone who doesn't like challenge. Like, as a general net rule, I think this is going to sound maybe egotistical, but like growing up, I was like a designated gifted child. And so everything came really easy to me. And so I never had to learn like how to overcome adversity until my adulthood. And with that delayed development in mind, I give up on things if I'm not good at them really quickly. I typically associate difficulty or toughness or necessary persistence as, either that's not for me, I don't like that, or whatever. And I think that's where Dark Souls games simply left me in the beginning. And it took persistent attempts to get over that hump. And the inertia there, I think, like, when I played Cleric Beast at the beginning of the game and I first tried it, my adrenaline was like 15 out of 10 because I was so scared and astonished that this boss had just surprised me. I just took it down without like taking any damage. It was just like, oh my God, am I going to die? But then, like, it wasn't like, yay, I feel like I've improved, which is the thing that people in the Dark Souls fan base tend to say, or I keep saying Dark Souls, Soulsborne fan base tend to say about these games, is that these games are not necessarily difficult, they simply are really stern masters of skill, and they teach you how to play them in a punishing way, but you learn and you improve, and you can see demonstrably that skill increase that you've made over time. And I think another thing that, like, weirdly enough, even the toxic gatekeeping get good types of the fans of these games, those people would also probably acknowledge the other point that y'all were making about these games not being for everybody. I think that there is a sort of desire within these games to withhold the experience of success from others. And just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that Katie's comment about accessibility was indicating that at all. I think ultimately the opposite is happening here, where we would all love more accessibility options of all varieties. However, the statement that these games wouldn't benefit from something like a difficulty slider, a damage toggle, an invincibility toggle, things like that, I fundamentally disagree with that. I know that it's more work and effort and labor on the companies to make these settings happen, but with Celeste, for example, one of my favorite games of all time, you can simply make yourself invincible. I've never been tempted to do it, but when I thought about going back for like the 100% of collecting all the berries in that game, being invincible would make my life really easy, and it would encourage me to actually revisit all the optional stuff that is like a little intimidating. In these games, I fundamentally believe the most interesting thing about every Soulsborne game I've played is exploration. Like, exploring these games and seeing how these environments end up interlocking is the rewarding part for me, where you suddenly come down an elevator and you walk out and you're back in the jail area that you were in before, or other such things. You suddenly take a corner and all of a sudden you're back in Yharnam. And seeing that world and assembling that world in your head, I think is actually really, really great. I think that's the strength here. And final thought, I guess, on all of this is, if I could just do like a walking simulator version of Bloodborne and just tour my way through everything and just like, all right, strike down a boss real quick like I did Shadow of Yharnam, I think I would love that. Like, I wouldn't want to play it that way on my first try, but especially going back for collecting things, exploring things, doing optional bosses, I would genuinely love that. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I wish Bloodborne was on PC, because with Elden Ring and with Dark Souls, I've cheated. I've done some sort of difficulty modification and it's made my life easier. I've liked the games more. The frictionless nature of that is appealing. So do with that what you will.
I will agree that difficulty sliders or toggles or whatever it may be would not negatively impact
you don't
the
have
game
to do it
for me, because it wouldn't matter. You don't have to do it. It is optional. It doesn't matter. As far as whether I go in the lane of, it is a developer choice. Like, and is, if they don't want to, if they're like, no, I don't want to, they are probably cutting themselves off from a lot of income, a lot of extra players, and that's their choice. And if they want to do it, they want to do it. I don't know. I agree. Celeste, great. If they wanted to include that, and a lot of people have really enjoyed that. For whatever reason, FromSoft is like, no, we don't want to. Up till now. We'll see. I feel like Elden Ring actually kind of opened that up quite a bit, so I'm curious to see what they do in the future. I don't know how that's going to influence their decisions, having this like increased mainstream success. But yeah, I just kind of always go with, that's what they wanted to do. Would it be nice for some people? Absolutely. I don't think of it as a negative. I don't think it's something that they have to do, but I do agree with you. The people who gatekeep in a way that are like, well, it's just not for you, therefore sit over there because you're not one of us. That's crappy. That's terrible. Like, no, I'm in favor of like, no, encouraging, like Jacob, no, come on in, you can do it. We're going to help you. And there are things that you can do. There are summons. There are different items you can get. There are so many things that you can do to help you get through this game. And you don't have to just like only one-on-one each boss and fight them this way and fight them the hardest way. And you don't have to beat all the end game bosses and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. You just, encouraging people is the lane that I liked for the fan base to go in, and I feel like that's increasing. I feel like it's a little bit more welcoming than it used to be.
I agree with both of you on one point and disagree with both of you on one point.
Yay. I love it. I love this.
I think, so on the catharsis piece of like beating a boss and getting a sense of accomplishment, there were several bosses where, and maybe it's because I experienced the game differently and because I'm impatient, and it sounds like I played a lot of the bosses more than you, Flora, like played Mikolash 20 times, the Cleric Beast maybe 20 times, even the final boss, Murgo's Wet Nurse, about 10 times. I got like such a sense of accomplishment from beating those bosses because, you know, the hardest games I've played, and I actually looked it up, in the last 10 years, Returnal is the second hardest game I've ever played, and Bloodborne is the hardest game I've ever played. So to face those bosses, and I'm not good at video games, and to, you know, go against them 20 times, and then on the 21st attempt, get it, like I got a real sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
I wish you could have been in the room when I beat Murgo's Wet Nurse, and I was like bouncing up and down, because I was like, the first hunter's gonna take off my head, and I'm gonna beat Bloodborne, and it's gonna happen, and I'm gonna see the sunrise. That was literally me. So I agree with you, Katie, in that respect. I agree with you, Flora, in the accessibility perspective. I am very much like always, let's just make it, because I am an able-bodied person. I don't have any sort of like accessibility concern that, you know, it would be great if, for example, these games had settings that would help people who have cognitive delays or people who have some sort of visual impairment. Like those two categories of, you know, disability cannot play Bloodborne. It's just the way it is. And I just love for them to be able to, even if it's, you know, we can have a debate about whether or not, you know, those will be up front or in the settings, or if, you know, everyone gets the trophy, which like also trophies are stupid, but I understand that some people like really appreciate having the trophy for playing it through like 100% the right way. But yeah, I just think games should be accessible to everyone, and you know, it's more work. Yeah. But this is not a small title, so I guess in that respect, I agree with you. We can, you know, debate the semantics of you get the trophy, you don't get the trophy. You don't
Everyone
get
gets a trophy.
It kind of sucks, but
everyone gets a trophy. I'll just say quick that I completely agree with you as far as games should be for everyone, as far as what they are able to do, as far as able. By games not for everyone, I meant more personality based. Like some games are not for everyone as far as just the personality and what they enjoy and what they like, and they don't have to try and appease everyone. Because I feel like if a game is trying to appease everyone, like, it's usually
like Katie,
worse.
you said on our
general
on our Doki Doki podcast, you also were saying like, oh, this game is not for me. Like I totally take the good faith aspect of what you're pointing out there. I think that definitely like certain tastes, like Jacob would never get into the Yakuza games, for example. Like I'm pretty sure that's cut and dry, not for him sort of thing.
I try.
Yeah, that's fine.
I try.
Yeah, like with me, I have games like that as well. Like a lot of first person shooters or like farming simulator things, or just like there are things that I am not interested in, and I think that's completely valid. The thing I would take issue with perhaps is the supposition that in Soulsborne games, accessibility options are built into them. Katie's not the first person I've heard say something like this, where you can summon, you can find an item, you can develop a strategy, whatever it is, and overcome your current issue. I really think it's as simple as, like Jacob, you described this as a big title. Like first party titles like this should have things that enable accessibility, and I don't actually I'm not convinced by the argument that Soulsborne games have accessibility options in them. Like I actually think that's false. I mean, it's an interpretation, of course, but I really would love something like literally in the settings menu. I think that yes, there are gradations of difficulty that you can supplant upon yourself while playing these games. Like for example, I never summoned anybody. I therefore played arguably a more difficult version of the game than I could have or ought to have. And that significantly impacted my experience subjectively. But at the same time, I think that these games never stop being unforgiving and punishing. Like you simply just get better at them. And it puts the onus on the player rather than the developer to make the game well, sorry for the repetitive vocabulary, but just accessible. Like, I think that that's something I would like to see more of as, like Katie suggests, they've grown and gained more mainstream popularity. I hope that a future FromSoft game is going to have more options for someone like me or like someone else to decide whether or not they want to use them or not.
I think we're all agreeing that, like, accessibility to level the playing field is a requirement every time. But I think it's mostly just, debating about the style, the genre of the game. And even, once that playing field has been leveled, what the difficulty is at that level playing field.
Yeah, I'd be on board with that.
And
absolutely.
whether or not you get to slide that up and down.
Yeah. There are games where I don't think that, like, accessibility options would be something I would use, but I would still think it would be a net good for everyone involved if they were there. I think we all are probably on that same territory.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Before, I feel like we're getting close to wrapping up.
Probably.
I have my rant that I have chambered.
God, you've been so patient.
Yes, please chamber your rant. Go.
Just let me. I'm gonna just take the mic for a second. So I was planning on likely attempting to platinum this game. As I have platinumed Elden Ring and I have platinumed Sekiro. And then I got so close. And I have one trophy remaining that I will never get. And I've just decided, no, I'm not getting this. I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get the platinum because the Chalice dungeons are the worst thing that FromSoft has ever made.
Worst as in
ever.
impossible?
Difficult? I've never played an Armored Core game, but I know it's worse than the Chalice. I know that Chalice dungeons are worse than anything in an Armored Core game, even though I have never played them. They're terrible. They're so bad. Okay, they are repetitive. They're so repetitive. There's some variants, but they're pretty repetitive. The bosses within them are mainly bosses from the game that have a little bit of something different. They're in a different environment, whatever. They're a little harder. There are multiple different kinds of Chalice dungeons. There's the Thumaru, there's the lower Thumaru, there's the super duper Thumaru, there's the Hintertombs, there's the Lorans, there's the 5 different types of Loran ones. You need different chalices to open each one. And there is one boss at the bottom of all of these things that I need to beat. That is a new boss that I would like to beat. The time commitment, and I spent a lot of time. And then I realized that I was still like 3 dungeons away, and I was like, no, I'm done. There are so many different kinds. And then within each dungeon, there's like 5 different levels of dungeon. And to unlock each dungeon, you need the chalice. And you need some combination of like 17 different currencies to open each dungeon. And they're all found in different places. And you have to go to this dungeon to get this many red jellies. And you have to go to this dungeon to get 4 ritual blood 4s.
Ugh.
And I can't. It's so bad. I was so mad. It's just padding, which to me is the absolute opposite of what FromSoft games are. There is no padding. Everything has intention. Yeah. And this is just padded on and padded on. And I can't. So I'm never going to platinum Bloodborne because I explored like 13 dungeons and I was still so many away that I'm like, I'm done. This is too much time. This is time of my life that I'm never getting back. Mm-hmm. And the Chalice dungeons are the worst thing that they've ever made.
Sorry, what is the trophy that you need? Like, do you have to beat them all? I have to
beat the queen of something, the Yarnum queen or something. That's all I need. One single...
And you have to beat all the Chalice dungeons
Not
to
all
get
of them.
to her?
Not all of them. But you have to go through so many of them to get so many different things. Like, I can't.
She's not on any of the boss lists I saw. Is she like a secret boss?
Yeah, in the Chalice dungeons. Because the Chalice dungeons aren't really part of the game. But you need to kill her to get the platinum.
That sounds miserable.
Yeah. It was miserable.
It does.
I hated it. At first, I was like, this is fine, okay. And I'm like, I'm killing this thing. And then I just got mad. And I thought, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth it at all.
No, not at all.
We brought up Settlebox a couple times in the podcast.
I'm glad you're about to bring this up.
They're currently
playing those chalice dungeons.
They're currently doing it. I think they're like basically at the end, like they're about to fight the queen, and I'm like, kudos to you, because that's a miserable time. Good job.
You're like, nah,
no, thank you.
You yeeted out of that. Thank you for holding that in for almost 2 hours.
It was hard.
I'm
As you
so
can tell, it just
surprised.
kind of like burst out. I couldn't even. It was too fast.
I couldn't have done that. Your self-control is admirable. I was debating getting the DLC.
The DLC is really good.
I've heard nothing but praise for the DLC. Now that I don't have a time crunch, like sort of Damoclesing over my head, I feel like I'm going to probably approach the finale of this game with a little more patience than I had, or at least like the last 72 hours worth of priorities here. Is there anything, like, if someone is listening and is in my situation where I've played most of the base game, if not all of it, and then am considering the DLC, like, is there anything you would say that would tip them over the edge? Because, I mean, that complaint is pretty profound. But, like, other than, like, bonus weapons and stuff, like, is this a required purchase if I am thinking right now, I like Bloodborne, I'm looking forward to finishing it?
Chalice dungeons are not part of the DLC. Those are separate
I misunderstood.
things.
I'm sorry.
The DLC is just, that's already in there in the base game. Those are the tombstones along the left side of the Hunter's Dream that you can activate with different chalices.
Oh, okay.
And it's just kind of these dungeons for dungeon's sake. The DLC is like new environments and new bosses, and also bosses that are based on things that have happened within the base game.
Okay.
And people that you encounter that you've heard about. And they are some of my favorite bosses in the entire game. I think generally speaking, like if you were to just grade one set versus the other set, I think the DLC bosses are better.
Okay.
Are my preferred bosses.
I've heard that.
When you say better, what do you mean better?
Just more enjoyable.
More well-designed?
More
enjoyable. Okay.
More variety also.
Okay.
I feel like some of the Bloodborne bosses have a little samey a little bit at times. I feel like maybe like half of them are a little samey in far as like their size and how they move and the type of attacks they have. I just enjoyed them a lot better.
Yeah.
Than I did the main bosses. I still liked them in the main game, but it kind of like it elevated a little bit. So if you are enjoying your time and you're like, oh, I like Bloodborne, then yes, I would say the DLC is worth your time. If you're like, nah, I'm good. I feel good with what I've done and I don't need to play more, then you don't need it. But I really enjoyed it. And the perfect time to probably do it would be right before Murgo's Loft. I mean, you could attempt it at any time, but once you kind of complete the game, I don't know that you can get into it.
No, I'm pretty sure all FromSoft games are just full New Game Plus in that regard. They just restart you rather than give you like a post-world to play through. Most cases. I'm conflicted because Bloodborne, to speak kind of broadly, is... I think I'm going to commit to this view. I think Bloodborne's my least favorite FromSoft game that I've played. And that's saying something in a few ways. I'll clarify the thought.
Didn't you not really enjoy Demon's Souls?
It's not that I didn't enjoy it.
Didn't you kind of nope out?
Accidentally. More of I got distracted nope. Like I did nope out and I still intended to play it. But then my Epilogue Gaming community and our Discord, we all were doing like a community playthrough of each FromSoft game. We moved on at the end of the month to a different one. And because there wasn't that community support anymore, I kind of just got distracted and did something else. It wasn't a distaste, nope, I'm uninstalling this. It's still installed on my PS5. I just, I need to return to it. I got stuck at a boss that was beating me up a little more than I probably would have expected. And I got stuck. It wasn't a dislike. But when I say dislike or it's not even dislike, I don't want to say that. With Bloodborne, I think the reason it falls at the bottom of the hierarchy of the Souls games I've played, it's complicated because I would also say it's my favorite combat out of the Souls games. I think the combat in Bloodborne is fast-paced in a way that I enjoy. I think the bosses are typically very easy to read. I think that the health restoration mechanic, or like reclaiming your health if you take damage by doing a quick hit or a few hits, is fulfilling, and as we've alluded to, having just like 20 blood vials to start off with for any encounter is so generous compared to what I would expect out of the other Souls games I've played. I think the reason it falls at the bottom of the hierarchy for me is because I don't really like the atmosphere of the game. It never got beautiful for me in a way other than like there's landscapes where you see the moon, but there's never like a beautiful environment. It's always decaying architecture that doesn't appeal to me, like classic religious architecture, where I find that sort of like Gothic construction of cathedrals just uninspiring to me. I know that for some people they think that's like the pinnacle of cultural beauty and whatever, but that is not me. And I think I wanted more like nature. Like one of the places that I despised in this game was the Forbidden Woods. And the reason I hated it so much is because I didn't realize that you could go to other tombstones in the dream to pop back into the world that way. I thought, because I went to the same tombstone I had gone to for the first like 6 or 7 lanterns, that because it wasn't on the list, the game was not going to let me teleport there. And I ran all the way back from the Grand Cathedral through that forest and died like halfway through it or at the end of it or whatever before I got to the snake area like 30 times, like more than any boss ever killed me. It was so demoralizing. And if anyone, especially the game, had said anything remotely to indicate that you could go to the other tombstone and suddenly, and then that implied that there's at least 2 other tombstones that you can use to teleport.
But why else would the tombstones be there?
Well, they didn't let me do anything in the beginning of the game, and I looked at them all at the beginning of the game, but then I had sorted them into my brain category of, oh, this does nothing. Never look at them again. I didn't think to like, oh, now it's going to work. Like, that just didn't cross my mind whatsoever, and it's not how it works, at least with Elden Ring and Dark Souls. They're like, once you get a teleporting like bonfire or I forget what they're called, Site of Grace, I think, in Elden Ring, like once you unlock those, they're there in your list. But it was in a different list for some godforsaken reason in this game, and I don't read the loading screens. It probably told me in a loading screen, or maybe even our like welcome home good hunter lady, maybe she said it at some point and I just wasn't paying attention because I was listening to podcasts when I played this game. Yeah, I don't even know what her name is. Like, anyway, sorry to go on like full rant status, but I have complicated feelings about this game. I think that people say this game's a masterpiece, and if I could even neutralize like the performance concerns that I griped about in episode 1 of our podcast, or rather, not that number, but you know what I mean, part 1 of our podcast on this game, I said at the time that it was marred by performance issues like frame rate, frame pacing, stuttering, clipping, like screen tearing, everything you can think of. This game wrecked my capture card. No other game has done this before. It would just black screen me because the frame pacing was so inconsistent that the capture card would freak out and I would get a black screen and I would die to a boss. I died more to that than I did to any in particular boss. It was so frustrating to play this game. This game needs a remake or a remaster like 5 years ago. And even if I neutralize those annoyances, I still think if I could be forgiving, Bloodborne falls at the bottom for me. I love the combat. I kind of hate everything else. And the combat, luckily, is the point. Like, that's what you do. But, like, the exploration was even unrewarding. I didn't love it. It didn't come together for me, at least by this point. Will I still finish it? Yes. Rant over.
Are you a Lovecraft fan?
No, not at all. That is another thing that just fundamentally I feel incompatible. And not to steer this off topic entirely, but, like, in my head, Lovecraft is associated with unsavory cultural attitudes, like racist beliefs and such, misogyny, things that ultimately are barriers to entry for me, my enjoyment. And though they don't all resurface here, some of them do. And I just don't find that aesthetic appealing. I love what Katie said, though. To say something positive, like the whole critique of human culture and like cognitive dissonance and those sorts of things about like structures, institutions, oppressions, like that is actually the most compelling out of any FromSoft. Like if you could like give a potted summary of it, that sounds more interesting than any other story I've played from the FromSoft games. Dark Souls, I agree. I don't really care about like gods and monsters and whatever. Like who cares? It's more about human relationships and power dynamics and like treachery, deceit, struggle, nihilism, suffering, all of those things. I love that. I think the way that those were described in this podcast were great. I didn't feel them in the game, as mentioned.
Yeah, the world is not like a nice place, and that it's intentional.
Yeah, of course.
But if you're not someone who like seeks out difficulty or seeks out like really cool dark worlds, then I don't think that you're going to be gravitated towards this because it is, sorry to sound like a third grader when I say this, but like, it's gross and it's dark and there's spiders and it's icky and I didn't like it.
I think that's a good point because I have always liked things that are dark and violent and twisted and messed up, and the more messed up the better. My sister has always been like, what is wrong with you? Why do you watch these things? Why do you like these things? That's too twisted. The twisted and the more bloodier, the more I usually like it. So it makes sense that Bloodborne is my jam. But yeah, no, you're right, Flora. Like Master Willem and Lawrence and their whole thing and their different theories and how that all plays out, and then it's fascinating. And it just goes deeper and deeper. And this game, to me, it, like I said earlier, it rewards curiosity, and it goes in every way, in combat, in story, in exploration. To me, it goes like 5 layers deeper than the vast majority of most games. And that's why I'm just like, oh, it's so rewarding. And I think it deserves everything that it gets for, especially at the time for when it came out and all the things it did. I think it's just excellent. I can't come up with a better word than that.
Yeah. I want to be clear. I don't hate this game. It's just, it's not a fondly remembered experience so far. But while
That's
I
fair.
say that, I do, when I was asking you about the DLC, Katie, I was thinking I'm going to finish this game without getting the DLC. And then in a few years, if I ever get the itch to dip back in, I would just start over, buy the DLC and go in that way. Because I think that the reward that I'm seeking from a game like this is those like series of layers underneath the surface. And having not made contact with them in my personal experience, one of the things I'm most excited for is just binging YouTube video essays, reading theories, hearing analyses of things. And once I prime myself with that knowledge, because I've resisted it as I've played the game, I kind of wanted to experience everything afresh. I think that would actually solidify my appreciation for this game a lot more, or at least bring me closer to how you're feeling about it.
We did it. We
I'm glad.
played Bloodborne. We survived.
Jacob, you did it.
You did it.
You did it.
I did it.
I'm very glad we did
it.
this.
Don't ask me to ever play a game ever again.
Yeah. Well, this feels like a unique challenge in a way that no other podcast choice for a game has felt to me up until this point. A lot of the episodes I've been on this year have been replays of things, and I've really loved that. It's an excuse to experience something I appreciate and develop new perspectives on it. This was the first game since Returnal, I think, where I hadn't played it before. So getting on the grind and like working on it, and like the camaraderie in the community and the Discord of everyone like talking and sharing experiences and supporting each other. This was a sort of genuine shared experience in a way that my prior podcast appearances on this show kind of weren't. And I love the experience of feeling like in a community playing a game like this, where I pop in the channel and I say something like, oh my God, you're not going to believe what just happened. And I share this like unique experience that ultimately we've all sort of gone through if we've played this game. And I think that's like the value of doing something like a podcast like this, where you build those relationships through those experiences, whether or not you actually share them or not, like casting like you did, Jacob. I think it was so exciting routinely to like have something happen, share it, and hear people develop their thoughts about it, react to it, share their own experience. I loved that about this game.
And that's one of the things that people love about FromSoft games is the community. Aside from the angry ones, aside from the angry people, we can shove them over to the side. But for the most part, it's all like encouragement and sharing and like, oh my God, I saw this thing and what is this? And this thing kicked my butt. And someone else being like, oh, you should try this and like you can do it. And like it is actually a really encouraging community that's kind of lovely. That's people don't know that enough, I think. So I'm glad that you felt that experience with the Discord, with the lovely Discord.
I'll say this about Elden Ring. I think I need to play Elden Ring this year because, you know, Elden Ring obviously is going to be brought up now in GOTY conversations as probably a lot of people's best game of the year.
God, it's crazy that was this year.
We'll see what happens with God of War Ragnarok, but that was this year.
It
So my
doesn't
thought
feel
is
that
like
way.
I should play it this year while everyone's still talking about it. It does not, like with GOTY stuff. I should play it now so that people don't have distance from it and can like chip in or help. But also, I just want to be a baby gamer and play easy baby games for the rest of the year. We'll see. What happens.
Well,
but if you want to join that lovely Discord that we talked about, you can go to leftbehindgame.club/Discord. If you want to find us on social, Twitter at Left Behind Club, on Instagram at Left Behind Game Club. And look, if you got all the way to this part of the podcast 2 hours in, do me a favor, send this show to someone else, because clearly you were either doing something and got distracted for 2 hours, or you enjoyed this really riveting conversation and more people should hear it. So beyond that, 5-star reviews on Spotify or Apple Podcasts really help. So thank you in advance. Flora, where can you be found on the interwebs?
Aside from the Discord we mentioned, you can find me on Twitter at LudoNarrativeFM, usually sharing a lot of fan art and screenshots and a lot of chronicled Bloodborne thoughts that will probably continue at the point that you're hearing this. In addition to that, you can find my written work on epiloguegaming.com.
I'm on Twitter. I'm Lesperak, Lesperak. I don't write interesting things. I just talk about random things that I like. And sometimes things that I'm mad at, but not a lot. Just, when the NHL puts digital boards in the background behind the players and it makes me so mad that I could throw things. Most of the time I'm really happy though, and I'm like, I like this game. So yeah, I'm on Twitter and also in the Discord.
Sports!
Why? Stop it.
Baseball!
Stop it.
I cannot begin to explain how much I hate the NHL digital boards. If it was digital boards versus glow pucks, I don't know which one I would take.
I don't know. I might take glow pucks. They're more whimsical, at least. I was so mad. Glow pucks are, like I said, they're dumb and they're not necessary, but they're whimsical. Digital boards is just capitalism messing with my game. Completely interfering with the game. So, that's how I feel.
What's better, giant Fox sports robots or glow pucks?
Fox robots, of course. They're there,
Okay.
they wave their arms around, and then they go away.
Fair.
That's what I want.
You can find me on the internet at Jacob McCourt on all major social platforms, JACOBMCCOURT. I do my ranting on Twitter, and on TikTok, I make daily video game content, approaching 300 days in a row of doing that. There may be something you like on there. I talk about games like Sneakers, the old Xbox game about rats that was exclusive to Toys R Us. I'll talk about Lego Marvel Avengers. Flora, you're chanting because you're like, I know that game. And if you're listening to this on the day that it came out, on youtube.com/Jacob McCourt tonight, I'm hosting another episode of Video Game Trivia with some lovely guests, so come on by. I'd love to see you. My friends, that's our Bloodborne series, so without further ado, I think I have to say, Mike, I did it! And also, shout out Mike Ruffalo. That, my friends, is one less game left behind. Hey, I'm Jacob McCourt.
I'm Katie Lesbrance.
And I'm Travis Colnut.
We are hosting a brand new podcast called Cutscenes.
There are tons of video game podcasts and tons of TV film podcasts, but we're going to bring you the intersection of both and talk about video game, movies, and TV.
I know what you're thinking. Aren't most of them not very good? Wrong. Some of them are fine. And we're going to tell you all about them.
Make sure to subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. Follow us on Twitter at cutscenes_pod. And most importantly, give us a listen.
See you soon.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.
Welcome to Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Jacob. No!
You're recreating the intro rewind. We can just acapella the intro this week.
Bum, 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 bum. But anyway, wow, what a tangent. Here we go. Podcast time.
It's going to be this. We got cough syrup Jacob on our hands.
Let's
Yeah,
Willing
so
to
much cough
indulge
syrup.
with the rabbit holes. I love it.
Yeah, my personal blood vial is cough syrup. So,
You stole my joke from earlier.
yes, I did.
Anyway, Do you want to just start over at this point again? Because
no, this will be fun for me to listen to.
Okay.